The city of Marietta is a place where history can be seen almost everywhere you look. Many of the buildings here today are from the late 18 and early 1900s, but how long will this be the case? As most of the country has still been fighting the economic issues that have held us down for so long, the city of Marietta has its struggle in how to build and what to preserve. The desire from some local business owners to build higher and more modern buildings has put the pressure on the city to figure out how to make it all work. We spoke with Tom Scott, a local historian, on the history of Marietta and its current issue.
Well, I think you've got to start with the assumption that development is good and preservation's good, and uh, where human intelligence comes into the process, hopefully, is deciding where the balance is. There's really very little in the way of preservation efforts before the 1970s. Cobb Landmarks and Historical Society was created in 1974. It's about the same time that the Downtown Marietta Development Authority is getting underway. And even though Cobb Landmarks takes the county's name as its title and attempts to be the organization for the whole county, in the early days its focus was really on preserving things in Marietta. In fact, one of the things that really led to its creation was when the old City Hall in Marietta was torn down in the 70s and a new one was built, and the new one is not very architecturally impressive, and also when the old courthouse was torn down in the late 60s. Those things kind of shocked some people locally and made them realize that things were being endangered with the growth in this area. And so it led to Cobb Landmarks, but most of the original members were from a few blocks in Marietta, and that was their focus more than anything. So Cobb Landmarks played an important role and continues to play an important role in preserving what they can of Marietta's history. But the other part, the Downtown Marietta Development Authority really was a byproduct of the decline of the downtown business district. And by the way, in terms of historic preservation, just as soon as the DMDA got into operation in the late 70s, by local legislation, Marietta approved the creation of a historic board of review that would have control over businesses in the downtown, in the DMDA district. And for the board of review, the DMDA members, the 8 members, also they chose an architect and a historian to sit with them when they were the historic board of review. So it became a 10-member board, and so under this local legislation, if a local business wanted to make any change in its facade, like maybe it wants to put an awning on the front, or I don't know, change the entrance somehow or other to create more room or so on. They actually had to go through the board of review to get approval for those kinds of changes. And so that's basically the way the system worked, at least in theory, and it was always controversial on these changes. The Goldsteins were one of the first to challenge the historic board of review when they decided they got an offer from McDonald's in 1977 to put a McDonald's on the square, and the plan was to tear down the Strand Theater, which looks beautiful now with the renovations that have been done on it in recent years. But they wanted to tear down the Strand and put up a McDonald's, and McDonald's came before the historic board of review with I think about 4 different plans of what the McDonald's would look like if they built it on the square, and the preservationists went berserk over that proposal and raised so much of a ruckus that McDonald's after a while decided that it was just creating too much bad publicity for them, so they withdrew their offer and the Strand stayed there.
With a blue tarp now covering the damage created when this building was tore down, we wanted to know what people thought about the issue in Marietta.
Well, I think the city can advance into a new age status without getting rid of historical buildings. I mean, all these buildings around us here, except for the courthouse, of course, I mean, it says something about the past. And it's very important for people to realize the past, especially the age we're going into now.
Yeah.
I mean, with everything changing the way it does so quickly, people don't realize what they had here before. And if you don't realize what you've got from the past, you certainly can't appreciate the present or the future.
I feel that Marietta should preserve the old buildings because it gives the town here this just a sense of history, and it's just aesthetically nice, I think, to see old buildings.
I agree. There's enough building going on outside the city limits that can handle whatever they need to handle there, and we need to preserve our history here.
What will Marietta do? Leave the city scarred by this blue tarp, or build a building that represents either the history or the future? For more information on Marietta, go to mariettainmotion.wordpress.com.